Hello, hello, and thank you for joining us. My name is Nicholas Lamar Soutter, and this is Overtime. This morning, there was an explosion in Beirut. At least 135 are dead, several hundred more are missing and feared dead, and 5,000 are wounded. We're going to cover that in a minute. We're also going to cover the attempts to pass another stimulus package before the end of the House session. Well, House and Senate, so congressional session, excuse me. We also have tomorrow, Hume's Problem of Induction will be on In Time with Courtney and myself, and we are going to have on Ozzy to discuss the famous philosophical problem. And today we have on Dr. Sy Garte. We'll be bringing him out in a minute to discuss the current status of the COVID vaccine. Is there one on the way, do we think? How soon might it be available? What trials are going on? So on and so forth. But first, let's start with the explosion. What you see there is a restaurant in Beirut. It's actually reasonably far from where the explosion took place. It was an extraordinarily large blast. What appears to have happened is there was ammunition being stored on in a warehouse near a dock. The ammunition appears to have caught fire. The fire spread from that to what appears to be 2,300 metric tons of ammonium nitrate, which exploded. Ammonium nitrate is a very powerful explosive. Those of you who remember the old television show MacGyver, there was a recent version of it, but back in the 80s it was a show called MacGyver about a character who would use common ingredients to do things. Ammonium nitrate was an explosive that MacGyver made during a show once, and to get out of a situation, a bunch of kids used it out of fertilizer, blew themselves up, and the show MacGyver had to sort of change a little bit of their formula in order to successfully broadcast without letting people, without having people kill themselves. This right here is an image of the blast area. That is there's a very large crater there. Actually, I don't think we have a before photo from this angle, but there are before and after photos. You can see there's a very large sort of hole right there on the left. A huge part of that building is gone. Everything in that area has just been utterly decimated. We're going to play for you now a part of the blast. What happened was, because the fire started in a warehouse. So I apologize. Because it started nearby, people were actually recording when the ammonium nitrate blew. People had already been recording it. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you footage that was taken. From this footage, I believe this is the footage here where you can actually see flashes of light as the ammunition is going off, and it sounds like gunfire. That's because ammunition's going off, and then eventually you'll see the explosion. These people here are caught not in the immediate blast, but in what appears to be the shockwave afterwards. A lot of people described it as a mushroom cloud. There were rumors going that a nuclear bomb had detonated. Almost all significant explosions produce a mushroom cloud-like effect. We can get into the physics of that later. Basically, it's cool air, warm air in the middle, and long story. At any rate, this was just ammonium nitrate, about, again, 2,300 metric tons. This here is footage from. You'll be able to see flashes of light. You'll hear what sounds like gunfire, and then you'll see the explosion. So let's watch this video here. All right, we're going to see that one more time. So again, what you saw there, flashes of light, that's the ammunition going off. Obviously, anyone in the area was in danger of getting shot, and then the building beside it explodes as the ammonium nitrate was ignited. Let's watch that one more time. We're going to go to another piece of footage. Yeah, there's several different pieces of footage. We're trying to use footage that isn't copyrighted. So, and good luck with that. Sometimes we get something that accidentally is, and we manage to simply, all we do is we take a hit. It gets demonetized for that video. But what I'm going to show you now is we're going to put this in the upper right window. People can watch this for a little bit. We're not going to put sound on this, I think, but this is. And okay, there is a view. I apologize for the elongation of that. We may be able to fix it. This is that same view. This is from much further out. I'm going to put one in the middle, and then I do want to get to Sy Garte because he's been patiently waiting. And Reed is in the live chat. That's been a long time, I think, since we've seen him. So thank you very much for joining us. So once again, we're going to show a couple, and you can see there the flashes of light. That's all ammunition going off. There's the explosion. Actually, I think that was the same view. That's it from very far away. You can start to see just the size of the blast. As of this moment, Beirut has been declared a disaster area, and the entire city is under a state of emergency. Again, last report, 135 confirmed dead, hundreds more feared dead as they are missing, and they're trying to find these people. So I'm going to let this run probably about another minute, and then we will bring on Dr. Sy Garte. But in the meantime, too, I would like to remind people, this was taken from the sea. You can see it's an incredible explosion. Ammonium nitrates, very dangerous stuff. It's, again, most often used in fertilizer of all things. So, what was I going to say? Like I said, there is an effort to get the latest stimulus package for COVID-19 out. People in Congress say they're cautiously optimistic they'll be able to do it before the recess. Whenever Congress tells me they're going to get something done on time, I realize they are in very big trouble. So I don't think that's going to be what we're looking at, but we will stay on that. We'll stay on. We're actually covering a few other things, so we're going to stay on everything that's been going on. But I do think, sort of in the meantime, what I'd like to do is bring out Dr. Garte. So let us. There we go. We can bring him out here if we have a second. I do apologize here. So let's, where's his, get him taken care of. And Dr. Garte, how are you? Sy, you there?
Hello.
Hey, all right. And we should have sound for you, sound for me. So if that works.
Sound is bad, Nick. I'm not hearing you.
Oh, you are not hearing me. All right. Well, let me see if I can. Oh, I suspect I know why that is. So give me 1 second, and let's just see if we can get that taken care of. Is that any better for you, Dr. Garte?
I
no,
hear it's very, very choppy. I can't make out words.
It's very choppy, and you can't make out words. All right. There's a possibility. No, I don't think it's that. I have a new microphone that I've been trying, and for whatever reason that hasn't been working. So we had sound just a few minutes ago when you came in, and now it looks like we don't. So let me see what I can do to try to improve for the audience. I assume that the audience can hear me and or Dr. Garte both. How's my sound to the audience? I'll wait till I hear back from you.
It's like it was before I came on. In other words, it was when you were doing the news. It's the same as now. I just hear little fragments.
All right. Oh. Let me try to just redo the Oh, now I'm getting some kind of.
That's better.
All right, that's better.
Yeah.
All right. Let's hope that stays. I think. And they're reporting here a little on the low end, and I suspect I know why. So I'll get that taken care of in a minute. Dr. Garte, you can hear me now?
Yes.
Shucks. All right. Well, we'll have to do the show anyway. Good to see you. How you been?
Not bad, considering.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that I think sort of everybody has to do the caveat of not bad considering.
Right.
All right, so we're gonna do a little boost to your audio because people are reporting that it's a little low. So hopefully,
Okay.
that will fix it. And the good news is now I can really hear you moving your chair. That's my chair's the same thing. I got a horrible chair every time I move. I'm like All right, so. Right now, the U.S. is actually, it's not just the U.S. Right now, as I understand it, there's about 150 attempts, 150 discrete compounds, or I should say, not compounds. What's it called? It's not a procedure, but a what do they call it when they're protocols that are being tested for antivirus, not antivirus, sorry. For you'll have to forgive me. My brain is still. Thank you. That's why you're here, because I can't talk. It's amazing I can even get up in the morning without your help. What's going on? Are any of them promising? How many do you think are in either phase 3 or somewhere near where? Or do you want to actually describe before we go? Do you want to describe the phases to us? Because I think a lot of people here they're in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. What are these phases?
Dear. Things are not going well, Nick. You're getting very faded again. Sorry.
Oh dear.
I think you asked. What's going on? What's new in vaccines? Is that? About
yes, sir.
Coronavirus.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I don't have any inside information. I have been in touch with a few people I know who are epidemiologists and people working in various areas of research, but I don't know anyone in the vaccine world. So I can only offer what's publicly available, which I have looked at in some detail. And I think mostly the news for vaccines is fairly good. It's about as good, it's better than anyone would have expected at this stage a few months ago. And I can explain why. I mean, you're right, there's a large number of vaccines at various stages.
All right. It appears Dr. Garte has frozen up or locked up. What I'm going to do is see if we can get him to connect through a different
trials. Is that poor network connection? I don't know.
You locked up. Yeah, sorry, I don't know. You locked up there for a second. Can you still hear me, or am I still choppy?
You were choppy, and I don't know why. I mean, I have an Ethernet connection now, so I don't know what this problem is. There's nothing I can think of.
I don't know either, but our policy on In Time is to always blame the guests. So I assume it's your fault. I'm going to blame you, and since you can't talk back or hear me, I think that's going to work perfectly for both of us.
All right.
So you were saying things are going faster than you expect.
Yeah, things are going faster and better than many people expected a few months ago.
Why is that?
Remember back in April, the prognosis was that there might be a vaccine sometime next year.
Yes, sir.
Am I coming through, or is it?
Beautifully. You're coming through perfectly. You are coming through perfectly.
Okay. So, people. The normal time to make a new vaccine is between a year and a half and 2 years, and a year and a half was considered about as good as could happen. But it looks like now that one or more vaccines that are working may be available, at least initially, even by the end of the year, by, like, say, November or December. Or the beginning of next year. I mean, there's still a lot of unknowns. It depends how well these vaccines perform in trials. And I don't know if I should mention how these trials work, because there are various stages.
Please, I
for
think
vaccine
everybody
testing.
would like to know the stages.
Right. So there's an early stage, which is actually doesn't have a number. It's called preclinical, and that's you test it in monkeys and see if they die, and hopefully they'll even have an immune response. If they raise antibodies, that's great. And once that gets passed, you then do phase 1, which is a safety test, and that's using people, a small group of people, to make sure the vaccine is not dangerous.
So that's the
And
stage.
phase 2,
That's where they're now calling it clinical trials. So there's the preclinical, and then there's 3 stages of clinical trials. Is that correct?
3 stages of clinical, exactly.
Okay.
So the first stage is just safety, and the second stage is a small group to see if there's any positive sign in terms of the vaccine stimulating antibodies. If that's positive, then you go to stage 3, which is the last stage, and that's a large trial, anywhere from 1,000 to 30,000 people. Usually it's larger numbers than 1,000. It's usually enough people, because what you do then is you give the vaccine to a sample of people who, some of whom you expect will be exposed. And then you wait and see what happens. And of course, this is all done with the control arm. So you have as many people who are given a placebo as who get the vaccine. And then you do the analysis of the clinical outcomes. First of all, of course, you're looking for antibody production to the virus, and you're looking for clinical outcome. How sick do they get? Do they get sick? If they do get sick, are they hospitalized? And you compare all these results with the placebo. A good vaccine should. Now, I should add that what's going on now is that phase 1 and 2 are being actually done together. So, in other words, they're trying out safety for most of the vaccines. There are some exceptions. For most of them, are doing phase 1 and phase 2, so they're doing safety along with antibody production in the same trial.
And what's the advantage of combining phases?
The advantage of combining phases is it makes it a lot faster, because by definition, every phase stops. You analyze the data before you move to the next phase. So by combining phase 1 and 2, you have one less stop, analyze, start again point. So that saves a lot of time. And it's okay, because the vaccines that are being tested are all using tried and true methods. There are a couple of brand new experimental designs that are not skipping phase 1 and phase 2. They're doing safety first, right, because these are not known. But all the others, especially the most promising ones, are using more or less methodology that is known to be safe. So the results so far are very promising, in that all the vaccines that have gone through at least, well, nothing has finished phase 3 yet, but several have gone through phase 1 and 2, and those all, at least, I don't know about all, but many of them have shown positive results in antibody production. And the reason that's a good sign is because it tells us something about the virus. It tells us that the virus is very antigenic. It does, if the vaccine, whether you're using a messenger RNA or using a piece of the virus or whatever's being used to stimulate antibodies is working. Now, there are some viruses and some vaccines where it's very hard to get an antibody response, just because of the way the virus is structured. It just is not as antigenic, for example, as other things. This virus appears to be very antigenic, so at least in terms of the vaccine use. So that's a good sign. And the other good sign is that some of those antibody responses are very strong. And that's what you want in a vaccine, especially with this virus, because you need to have a very strong immune response to stop it. So all of that is good, and as I said, there are several different approaches. One of the most promising is use of mRNA, which is basically a copy of the gene that some of the genes that the virus has, and that's being used, and that's doing very well. And this is being done by a company called Moderna, along with the NIH, and that one looks good. And then there are several others that are using pieces of the genes. So some of them are mRNA, some of them are actually the the RNA from the genes, or in one case, I believe they actually did a reverse transcriptase, and they're using DNA-based material to do the vaccine. And then there are the other approaches are to actually use an adenovirus as a vector to bring some of the material into cells, and this is being done by a number of groups also, including AstraZeneca. I'm looking at a list here. And there's a few other groups doing things like that, using adenovirus. That's very common. There are several vaccines that are now used that use the adenovirus as a vehicle. It's a carrier. Let's see. I'm just going through this here. Oh, and then there's another. The other approach is using some of the viral proteins, which is really where you get. You're supposed to get, for most cases, you get a strong immune response, and there are some positive results there too. With a number of companies, some in China, some in U.S. or Europe, and all of these experimental vaccines are in different stages of development. They're different, most of them have gone through phase 1 and 2, or at least phase 1. A couple are now in phase 3, which is takes the longest amount of time. That could be several months. So there are some of these companies who are predicting that phase 3 will be done in the fall, like in October or November. And if those results are positive, most of these companies have already raised lots of money to start production. And my guess is that they will start production early, even before the analysis of the data, to avoid a real-time lag. And production, of course, is the really slow step. It takes a long time to produce large numbers of doses. But my guess, and I don't know this from anything I've seen, but this would make sense, is that the earliest set of doses would be given to select people, those at risk. So people over 60, 65, people with underlying conditions that put them at risk. And then, so they will also function as a sort of a phase 4, because we'll see how they do. And then as more doses are produced, sometime in the spring, if all goes well, of course, all of this is if, but if all goes well, there'll probably be enough doses around of one or more vaccines that can be given to the general public. So by definition, a positive result is if 50% of the people getting the vaccine are protected. That's kind of low, 50%. But in this case, it would be enough, because that, along with the number of people who have already been exposed, who've already had the disease, you get a certain amount of herd immunity, and the disease would still be with us, but it would be not the way it is now. So it would certainly make a difference in the economy. It would make a difference in school. Things could start opening up. Hopefully there will be more testing and better testing, and and then more vaccines will come online. And so I think we have to get through the next 3 months or so. If we get through September, October, and maybe by November or December, we'll start to see if, again, this is all optimistic planning, but if But people like Fauci and Collins are suggesting that this is a strong possibility. They're optimistic. So if that happens, yeah, we could get out of the woods in a few months.
All right. Well, that would be nice. I do want to, and also I'll try not to forget because I have a lot of questions. One of them is what would out of the woods look like? Would we still have to wear masks? Yada yada yada. But I want to stay on vaccines for another minute, and hopefully I'm reasonably clear. The Moderna one is the one that I've heard has the most. It's pretty far into the phase 3, as I understand it. The government has put $1 billion into supporting it, and I can certainly see why. If it looks like it's going to pass phase 3, just ramp up production. Worst case scenario, okay, you throw that money out the window if it doesn't pass the phase 3. But if it works, you save a lot of lives. So they start doing that quickly. Why does a phase 3 trial take so long? I understand it. Well, so why does it take so long?
Well, yeah, because it's not like the earlier phases where you're basically looking for things that you can test easily. If for example, for toxicity, people get sick, so that kind of happens very quickly. But you're looking for antibody production, you give the vaccine, you wait a week or two. I don't know how long. You wait some period of time, not very long, and then you take blood samples and test for antibodies. For phase 3, you're looking at a whole range of endpoints, including, do people get sick if they've been exposed? And you have to wait for people to get exposed. You're not exposing people to the virus. Okay, so that's why you give it to 20 or 30,000 people, because and you generally would give it at a place where the virus exists. So one, I don't remember which, but one group is using Brazil. People are using other places where the virus is prevalent. So that takes time, because you just have you give it to 20,000 people or 30,000 people, and then you wait and see what happens. And usually there's a defined amount of time, like 2 months or whatever. In this case, I don't know what it would be, but and then at that point, you go back and you record who got sick, were they on the treatment, did they get the vaccine or did they get the placebo? If they got sick, how sick? And you look at the data and you compare the percentage who got sick with the ones who didn't. The percentage who got sick with the vaccine with those who didn't get the vaccine. Right.
So not to belabor the obvious, but you can't deliberately infect people to test if it works. You can, and we do with animals, and there's a lot of questions about the ethical nature of that, but you certainly can't do that to people. So during the phase 3, since we know it takes 2 weeks on average, or I think that's actually the outside number, but we usually use as a working number 2 weeks from when a person gets infected to when they start to show symptoms.
That's the outer end, right? 2 weeks.
Yeah.
The latest.
So, and certainly in the aggregate, we've been using 2 weeks. If we're going to say it takes 2 weeks, then at a minimum, when you do this when you give it to people, you're going to have to wait. Assuming some of them get infected right away, it's going to be 2 weeks before you can tell who's been at a minimum who just got infected like the day after. You need to wait longer. You need to wait till a significant number of them have been infected, such that you can tell that they've been infected. Right. You have to test them. You have to make sure that that's what they've got. So now they're sick. They've got it. And then you just basically have to have enough where it's a significant difference between those who have the placebo, who should be getting it at the same rate as basically everybody else in the world, and those who didn't get the placebo, who hopefully are getting it at a smaller rate, but it has to be a significant amount, that it's not just randomness that they're getting it less. And that takes a while. It takes a while to accrue all those.
I'm losing you again, Nick. I'm losing the sound. Sorry.
I'm sorry you're losing me. I understand that people sometimes have a hard time keeping up with all this science knowledge. I just, it was the sound you didn't get. Okay, my bad. It's no fun making fun of you, Dr. Garte, when you can't hear it and it's only the live chat. Here's what I'm saying.
That's true. I heard that.
You said you weren't keeping up with me, so I said I understand. I'll slow down the science talk because if I understand, you're not gonna, But at any rate, all right. So phase 3 is just gonna take a while. Once that's done,
Right.
they're gonna, or if and when it starts to look good, they're gonna start to ramp up production. They're gonna give it to the most vulnerable first, and that's actually gonna also count as a phase 4. So. Let's assume best case scenario, and it works well. We start getting it out there as quickly as possible. What does that look like? Do we get to stop wearing masks? Do we need to keep wearing? And again, the best case scenario.
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't think anyone knows. At this point, in some places we're in the worst possible shape because. Anybody can get it at any time. There's so much anecdotal stuff going around about somebody who, I think there was online, there was a woman who said, one day I didn't wear a mask and I got COVID, So
the mask doesn't protect you, it protects other people. It really gets me that people still don't. Oh my God, please continue. I'm sorry. That's a trigger. That's a trigger.
I know, but this is what you see online. So, I think that the lockdown situation, which has been
all right. So Sy has been cutting in and out.
frozen. We all frozen?
Oh, no, you're back. We lost you for a bit. I'm going to start to say I'm not convinced this is actually on our end, but you are back. So please continue. We were talking about the worst case scenario and how I get triggered by people who sit there and say that, well, the mask is for my protection, and so freedom because Anyways, please continue.
Right. Yeah, I don't think we even want to talk about that. I mean that's a whole subject that's too depressing and too crazy. So let's talk about the civilized, rational world.
You mean Fantasyland? Please continue.
Fantasyland, right?
Yeah.
So I think it will be a tremendous relief because a lot of things that are now closed could probably open, and a lot of people who are at high risk would be able to, get relief because if they're vaccinated and it works, they should be fine. So that would make a big difference, I think, in terms of a lot of things. And then it becomes like a really bad flu, which you don't want to get, but it's probably not going to kill you, and you're probably not going to get it. So it wouldn't be gone. There's a guy named Larry Brilliant you've probably heard of who is very much involved in the vaccine world, and he's been predicting that COVID-19 will be with us for at least 3 or 4 years, but not the way it is now. It'll be with us, meaning that every now and then there'll be an outbreak somewhere, a few isolated cases, a few people will die, like many other viruses that exist now. But this worldwide pandemic with us, and what we're now seeing, just to get off the subject for a second, some people are saying it's a true second wave starting in, parts of the U.S., which could really get majorly.
All right, you are cutting out again, and yes, I do want to. Well, we've lost Dr. Sy Garte.
Unless they change,
All right, you did cut out there for a second. I do want to have a clarification just because this discussion was going on in the live chat. Yes, it is the official policy of In Time to blame Canada for everything. I think I'm going to amend that and say that we can also blame the guest. But right. It's not a joke. We have that in a staff document. That was like the second document ever drafted on In Time for order of blame, and Canada was sort of highest. Anybody wearing a hat was second highest. That kind of didn't bode well for Ansgar, but hey, these things happen. I had no control over it other than writing it. And then we had a whole bunch of others, just a major assessment of blame. Anyone in a $400 suit actually turned out was last by just convenient, But at any rate, so you were saying about this businesses will open presumably. Again, we're talking best case scenario, and in a rational world, which obviously does not exist. But what people would start doing, and so the numbers that I've heard is that roughly until 70% of this country gets it, assuming that you have a limited immunity of some kind. All right. So you're okay. He's not hearing me. So what he was saying before the show started was he was saying that I was one of the best hosts he had ever seen, and I said, well, thank you. You don't really need to say that. And he said, no, Nick, this is important to me, and I want you to know that you really are one of the best hosts I've ever seen.
Nick, can you
yes.
write something on the chat? Because
yes,
I can't hear you at all now.
I can do that.
This platform is not working.
We can also reconnect another way, but I can certainly connect you to the live chat, although I'm kind of enjoying having fun with you while you can't hear. But let me...
can't hear you.
Yeah, so let me... I should be able to chat just fine. Let's see. So what I'm going to ask him is it 70%? 70% for herd immunity is what I understand it to be, and that this is going to continue till we have 70% across the board.
Right. So 70% herd immunity is the goal. And when I said 50%, that's not for herd immunity. That's for considering a vaccine that is successful or that works. So that's the minimal. Now, if there were two vaccines, one gave 50% immunity and the other gave 60 or 70, obviously we go with the better one. But if the best we can do is 50%, I think that will be used. And it won't produce herd immunity, but it will produce, some degree of relief. And people will still be getting sick, but much, much fewer, and presumably much fewer deaths as well. So, would we still need masks? I would doubt it, although that would probably depend on each area, because and it would depend on how much protection there is, how many people are protected by the vaccine. If it is 50, 60, 70%, then masks might be needed. I don't know. But all of this is all speculation, because we don't really know. As things go, we're going to have to look at the results, in time, so to speak, if I can coin a phrase. And it's a moving target. This disease has been a moving target from the beginning, and we keep changing things and keep trying out other things. For a while, I thought the main work should be on finding an antiviral that would at least keep people alive. And that doesn't seem to be going too well. And on the other hand, the vaccine is coming along much faster. Remdesivir works, but not that much, and it's very expensive, and there's not enough of it. And it does. There is a lowering of the death rate, and we don't know why that is. It could be different people getting sick. It could be that some of the treatments are working. The big controversy on hydroxychloroquine, but that's a whole nother show. We don't have to get into that. What else? And then there are some other treatments that, dexamethasone, which has to be used very carefully. It's very good at an end stage, but not so good in middle stage. So, because this virus is crazy. I mean, viruses usually kill you by multiplying out of control and overwhelming the immune system and just causing a lot of damage to organs. But this virus kills you in many ways. It does it that way, but it also kills you by stimulating a cytokine storm, which is a extreme immune response, much worse, which is actually worse for the body than anything else. So, it's crazy. I mean, to give therapeutics, you need to manage each patient very carefully to see when you give an antiviral, when you give an anti-inflammatory, because each one is going to be useful at some stage and not at others. And then there's the question of, what Harvey Risch, who is the epidemiologist from Yale, who's been recently pushing hydroxychloroquine, makes it very clear that hydroxychloroquine alone is not the answer. He says it has to be given with an antibiotic and zinc, the three together. It's a cocktail. And I don't know whether that is being tested or not.
All right, so we have a few questions I'm going to ask. If anyone has any questions for Sy Garte, they can let me know. I can pass them on to him. I'm going to be texting the questions because the sound appears to be coming.
Now I hear you.
He hears me, so for now it's going to work. I do have a question or two queued up, so if we lose the sound again, we'll get that taken care of. There was a question: have I taken demon sperm? Not yet. That's a reference. Yeah, I'm sure you get the reference. The doctor, the hydroxychloroquine doctor. Yeah. Oh dear Lord. Yeah,
like I said, that's another show.
That is a whole. We already did a show. We did a show. You and I did a show with Courtney on conspiracy theories related to.
That's right.
Even you did not predict that one. You did not predict the demon sperm.
No.
Sperm.
And I should have.
Nightmare. Oh, dear Lord.
Anyway.
Yeah. So, let's, there are still there's obviously the flu. There's a bunch of others. So, do you think that there is something to be said for, in the future going forward, in general, adjusting our practices just even after we've gotten this? Let's assume best case scenario, we do get an antiviral and we kill it. We're done in 2 or 3 months. Do we maybe still maintain some social distancing? China's been wearing the masks. Not China. Japan has been wearing the masks just culturally. That's actually just, they've been doing that for a while. Should we consider maybe that's just a wise idea going forward, or?
I don't know. I think once we have the vaccine and people are getting vaccinated and we see what the results are and we know how good the vaccine is, the people who really know stuff, which is not me, I mean, talking about the virologists and the physicians and people like Tony Fauci, et cetera, will make recommendations. And I can't guess at this point, what would be the best way to. I think it's likely that there will be a lot of pressure to return to as normal as possible. And,
I suspect.
Yeah.
You did mention how this virus kills people, and I think most of us don't have an understanding of that, and it appears to work through multiple ways, and in many cases does permanent damage to the kidneys, to the brain, right, to a whole bunch of to people. I mean, this is staggeringly serious. This isn't like anything that I can recall as seeing any time before. What does this do to you?
Oh my goodness. This is crazy. Am I frozen?
Nope. I got you. You're good.
I'm okay. Okay.
Yep, you're good.
What it does is you're right. We've never seen a disease like this. By we, I mean the world. There are worse diseases. There are diseases that are far more fatal. But this, but this one is crazy. I mean, the virus attacks the lungs, but it also attacks the kidneys and other organs and blood vessels, and people often die of pneumonia. But what it also does is and I don't know the details of this, the molecular details, but it somehow stimulates a huge cytokine response, which is really at toxic levels. So what happens is when you get a very high viral burden, the virus is no longer the the danger. The danger becomes the immune response, which is overwhelming. And remember, it's almost like it's not a very good analogy, but it's kind of like, there are autoimmune diseases where the disease is caused by by antibodies, by an immune response to things that it shouldn't be responding to.
Well, let me give a quick example of this. Just so your own immune system does do a great many things to try to fend off diseases. One of them, for example, is to raise your body temperature, and it does this to try to kill the disease because your temperature goes up. Problem is, if it decides it's going to keep going up and up and up until it kills the virus, it may kill you first because.
That's right.
So and then
and temperatures with this are very high. When you had it, do you know what your high temperature was?
My temperature actually hovered around 100.5. It never really went over that. And that wasn't the problem. I did get hypoxia, and I started hallucinating. But people sometimes do hallucinate from the fever. I was hallucinating from the lack of oxygen. So between that and like a histamine response too, people have to have EpiPens. The problem isn't the disease that's killing you; it's your body's response to what it thinks is something that's attacking it. So it's overloading, and then
exactly.
It sounds like that's what you're saying is going on here, which is your body's own response to the disease actually can end up killing you.
That's right. That's right. And so therapies at late stage are now being focused on stopping that immune response. Dexamethasone does that. But you see, if you give dexamethasone too early and it stops the immune response, you're not getting the good part of the immune response, which is killing the virus.
You won't be able to fight it. Oh, dear Lord.
Right. So, that's when you want to give an antiviral, but there's no point in giving an antiviral at the end because by then the virus is not the issue. So it's crazy. I mean, this is, I have a couple of close friends who work at medical centers and do various things, and morale is low. Let me put it that way. I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know. It's not like anything. I mean, sometimes you find very low morale among oncologists because they're dealing with a very difficult disease that's very hard to cure. But this is crazy because there's still so much that we don't know about how and why this thing works. And that's kind of strange. We should know by now. It's not that hard to do these experiments, but they do take time.
Well, the way I kind of think of it, first of all, I mean, it reminds me a bit of the early days of AIDS, because it was a retrovirus.
Yes.
We didn't understand retroviruses very well, and that it was very hard for anyone to wrap their head around.
I was around then, and I was actively involved in research, and in fact, the department I was working in was one of the first to discover AIDS at New York University, and for years. About 2 years, nobody knew what the cause was, and then it turned out to be a virus, but that wasn't known initially. It was just this strange tumor that was occurring in gay men, and nobody had a clue why. And then when the virus was discovered, it turned out to be this new virus. People had known about retrovirus for a few years, and there weren't that many human retroviruses known at that time. And not only that, it was the only and remains the only virus that actually targets the immune cells themselves. And that's why it was impossible to stop it, because the cells that are supposed to stop it were the cells that were being killed. And that was a terrifying disease. I remember there was talk about, putting
Oh, you broke up. You're breaking up. You are breaking up. Once again, Canada has interfered with our connection. We've noted that we were able to successfully keep Tony Designs out of the stream until just recently. So people who are concerned, there you are. You're sorry about that. You broke up there for a second, but you appear to be back.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what's going on.
Terrifying disease was the last thing I heard you say.
Like I said, I have an Ethernet, so.
Well, I think it's not the. There's any number of things it could be, but we'll worry about it later, and maybe sometime you and I can take aside a little time and try to troubleshoot that connection. I got some ideas. I used to do that. I used to do tech support. Don't ever do tech support for anyone ever. It's terrible. It's absolutely, I hate it. It got a little better when they did remote desktop connect, because then you could just sit there and say, okay, let me take over control and I'll just do whatever. But even then, it's all right. So, well, and then I actually wanted to speak to you. Had said that it was with COVID-19, it's this really bizarre thing, and we don't see it coming. But I think that's all that actually we're really, for the most part, going to see now. And I use the same example in law cases. People say, the ones that go to court are always the really tough ones. Why is that? Why are none of the easy ones going to court? Well, because they settle out early. Everybody knows they're easy. They don't get, the easy diseases nowadays are just sort of out on the ones that we see and freak out about. Of course, the ones that we haven't seen before. That's why we're seeing them, if that makes any sense.
Well, I just wanted to, I think I got cut out when I was talking about AIDS, so I just wanted to finish one thing there. That
please.
There was a huge amount of conspiracy theories about AIDS, and all kinds of crazy ideas and suggestions were being made, and it was a very serious social issue. And eventually it was discovered that it couldn't be spread except through sexual contact, so that helped a little. But there was still a lot of panic, and what I was starting to say is that we were very fortunate that a very dynamic, very intelligent fellow joined the NIH and started a new institute called AIDS, Allergy, and Infectious Diseases, and that was Tony Fauci. He's been there since. That's when he started.
Yeah,
and he's been there ever since. And he not only was the leader of the fight against AIDS successfully eventually, although it took many years because that was a really tough story. But he also has been, at the center of the Ebola and all the other H1N1 and all the other problems we've had with infectious disease. So we're fortunate that he's still there at 79. Let's pray that he doesn't decide to leave.
They always lament when people politicize these things, and the reality is they have to be politicized at least a little bit, because your politics informs how you're going to make decisions about things. So if you're conservative versus liberal, you will necessarily have some ideas as to whether or not they should be handled at the state or at the federal level, and yada, yada, yada. That can't be gotten around. I don't really consider that politicization. Excuse me. Technically it is, but because it's just sort of background noise and has to happen, I get it. When you have President Trump doing opposition research, Oppo, it's been a while. We have him doing opposition research, or I guess they already had it. They're releasing the Oppo research on Fauci and trying to undermine his credibility, leaving the World Health Organization because he doesn't want to admit that he's screwed up. Talk about, I'm afraid enough of the virus. Now we've got, oh dear Lord.
Yeah.
I know there's not much else to say other than to just bitch about it and remind everyone to vote.
Like I said, we've got what, 3 months and maybe less if we consider the election to be the point that we have to survive through. Although that doesn't really. He's still president even after the election. So, we got to get through Corona and Trump together, and if we can do that, hopefully we'll be all right. I find his actions and lack of actions morally, ethically, and in every other way reprehensible. And I don't think I'm alone.
No,
I hope a lot of Republicans are seeing it too.
And coming from you, actually, just because I happen to know that in general you almost never opine on political subjects. You keep your religion and or your political views out of everything you do. So that's a stark rebuke coming from you.
Well, that's going to change in the coming months, because I feel that if Trump is reelected, that we're done. I mean, this country's done for lots of reasons, which I don't want to get into now. But I do plan to start becoming very political online, because we can't do another 4 years with him. We won't make it.
And I think the damage that we've gotten already is sort of beyond the scope of what anyone could have imagined. But I think we'll save that.
Yeah.
We'll have to do a show on that. Invite a whole bunch of guests and everybody. I mean, that's a long. It's funny. I was just going over some of our older shows, and actually now I was going over some of the stuff I had written right after he'd gotten elected, and I was like, it so much as I was like, I remember when this was a big deal. I was like, wow, it's like that would have ended a presidency, and that was just the beginning.
Right.
All right, so we do have some reports, and I think it's about time to wrap this up. But we've got some reports too of people having video issues. I'm not entirely sure why. Before we go, I do want to quickly show everybody, and I apologize at this point. Sort of the only way to do this is to cover you briefly, and we're going to show. This is footage of because, as you know, Dr. Garte, there was a blast this morning in Lebanon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I had wanted to get the footage for it. That is the site before the blast, and that's actually briefly before the blast. You can see there are two ships there on the right. And I believe in this footage you see the ships after the crater. And so we're going to see there are the two ships. There's the crater. That crater is estimated to be 140 meters in diameter. You can see the ships there have been obviously moved by the size of the blast. They haven't sunk, which is quite remarkable. But that is, and let me just see here if I can get that. So once again, that's the before, that's the after.
Wow.
That's a very large hole. So again, it started as a fire, and if you want to, you can see it. We show it at the very beginning of this program. We show the you can see the ammunition going off. You can hear what sounds like gunfire. It's rounds all discharging, and then it looks like it was just a piece of that warehouse. There was ammunition. Somebody thought it was a good idea to store ammunition right next to ammonium nitrate. Strikes me as a rather poor idea. It was 2,300 metric tons of. It doesn't sound like that could be metric tons, but apparently that's what I'm seeing as opposed to just regular tons. Metric tons of ammonium nitrate, and that's what happened. So we'll stay on that, but. Oh no! Okay. Not what I'm seeing now. According to Feline in the live chat, is 2,700 tons. So, was there anything else that you think I missed? So it looks like we've got a couple of very good possibilities. There are obviously multiple companies are working very hard on vaccines. That that does actually remind me of two things. Before we go, and this may take longer than 5 or 10 minutes even to cover, but I think it's. Could you briefly cover the different kinds of, if you think it can be done in about 10 minutes, the different kinds of vectors for a vaccine? So you had said RNA, or so what are they trying to get out? The different kinds of vaccines that are out there, or that they're working on, I should say.
You're right. So what you want to do in a vaccine is you want to expose cells to the part of the virus, in this case, or the bacteria, whatever it is, part of it, that will stimulate an antibody response so that those antibodies will recognize that, it's called an epitope, that thing that you used, and will kill it when it, will attach to it and kill it when it arrives in the body. So it's a tricky thing to do because you never know which part of the vaccine will be successful in that. And usually these antigens, the things that stimulate antibodies, are proteins. So one way is to just take some protein from the virus, which is not infectious, it can't do anything, and use that, deliver that into cells. And the delivery there's all kinds of ways, including attaching it to another virus, or just with other vectors, which I'm not really familiar with. The other approach is to use genes from the virus, which are not harmful genes, just the genes that are part of the virus and that will produce proteins. For example, the spike protein that's at the surface of the virus and that would allow the antibodies to attach to that surface protein and remove the virus. So how you do that is you can use the gene itself. In this case, it's an RNA gene, or you could actually use DNA, as I said, by reverse transcriptase, or you use the messenger RNA that the virus produces, which then goes into the cell to make
All right, we appear to have lost him again, and we also have, so let's just see, one report of there being music in the background. So let me, I don't know how or why that might be, but I will take a look into it. Oh, there you are. Sorry, we lost you for just about 15 seconds there.
Yeah, I know. All right. So anyway, yeah. So the idea is to try to get viral proteins into the body, into the cells, so that there will be an antibody response, and that antibody response lasts and will recognize when you're infected with the actual virus.
All right, and this is and so all of those are prophylactics. They are there to try to to stop you from getting infected, as opposed to, say, an antiviral.
Vaccines don't cure you. No.
Okay. So if you've already got it, the vaccine's worthless. Because I've heard people
useless.
say, okay.
That's true for any vaccine. You don't give a vaccine when someone has already gotten the disease.
All right. Well, Dr. Garte, thank you very much for joining us. I do apologize for the
It's been a wild ride.
Yeah. And this is, I mean, you know this. I was on the Obama campaign. I was very pleased to be on the Obama campaign. I was pleased to, but it's a little hard to imagine. I was so optimistic and idealistic, and I really was one of those. You know, my bumper sticker still reads, "Yes, we did." And to go from that to this has been quite a change. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We will have you back on for just about. We have a whole host of things, but I do appreciate it. I'm going to be in the Discord afterwards, and if you have a little time and want to join us in the Discord, that would be great. I know I think we've had you in there before, so. But if you're up for that, spectacular. If not, I understand. It's been a
not
long
today.
day. All right. Well, thank you anyway. Tomorrow we've got Ozzy on discussing Hume's problem of induction, which is a very specific problem in philosophy and one that I think is often misunderstood for the severity of it. So we're looking forward to that. And then I don't remember if it's next week or not. I'll have to check our calendar. But we also have Ozzy and Dr. Carrier on to discuss the philosophy of religion. I believe it's actually the first time the two of them have ever streamed together. So looking forward to that. Other than that, thank you very much for joining us, and we do look forward to seeing you guys at some other time when Canada is not interfering with the stream. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.